Welcome to Dear Book Coach. I'm Carrie Savage, a writer and certified book coach.
And I'm Stephanie Detlefs, a writer and certified book coach.
And I'm Terry Thayer, writer and certified book coach.
This is a friendly advice space as you plan, draft, and revise your novel. In each video, we answer one question submitted by a writer like you with 3 different points of view, and you get to pick the advice that resonates with you. So today's question came from Stuart. How would a book coach, or dear book coach, how would a book coach go about helping an author to craft a series? Stephanie, you want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, I will be upfront and honest and say that this is a little out of my wheelhouse because I don't read very many series and I don't write them and I generally don't coach them. So, but I'm going to go with my overall perception of how this would go. And I would ask the same questions of the author that I ask when crafting a single book. So I would ask those questions about each book in the series and also about the overarching story. Questions like, what is the point of the series? What are you trying to say? Where is the beginning and where is the end? I would have the writer plot out the major plot points of the entire series, just, loosely as a framework that is a working document to make sure that everything is connected and that each moment is driving into the next one so that you know that the overarching story is strong and a good foundation on which to work on each book. I would suggest doing this in a really broad way, of course, because as you write each book, new things are going to come up for the next one. This is, of course, talking about series that really you need to read in order. I know there are other kinds of series as well, and both Carrie and Terry are going to talk about that, so I'll leave that for now. The most important thing always would be to keep revisiting that overarching story, just like you would with an individual book, so that you are making adjustments as needed, but maintaining the structural integrity of the overall story that the protagonist is going through. So I'll throw it over to Terry, who is the expert here.
Well, you did a good job for somebody who doesn't read, write, or coach series. So. Because, yeah, some of this is basic book writing. But I have written 2 series, one 4 books and one 3 books. And one of the best advice I got when I was midway through my, I don't know which one, both of them, at an author who had written about 8 in her series said that she really wished that she had put more in the first book because she was kind of running out of things for her characters to do that was different. I remember she had sent the guy back to college because she had mentioned that he hadn't finished at one point. And she was really kind of struggling. Now, as a book coach, I probably would have told her to stop writing that series. And she did soon afterwards, if you're running out of things to say. But her point is valid. What you put in that first book is kind of the Bible. It's kind of there forever. And you have to work from it. So you can do 2 things. You can put it chock full of stuff, or you can put barely anything in there so that it doesn't present a problem down the road. You don't want your protagonist that you've talked about hating gardening coming back, in book 6 as a master gardener. But you also have to build full characters and that are interesting from the get-go. So having like a skeleton thing in the first one isn't really going to work too well. Like Stephanie said, the point is you're thinking long-term. So give your protagonist and your main secondary characters careers, hobbies, interests that have legs, that are interesting. Your character needs some space to grow and change. I think one of the difficulties in series, and you do see this in some series where the protagonists just are kind of the same from book to book, but I think they need to grow somewhat in each book. But it's not like a standalone novel where your protagonist has this big arc. She's going to have sort of this arc, and then the next book is a little bigger, and the next book is a little bigger. So just leave them some room so they can always learn something new about themselves or their world. I think one area a book coach would be really helpful is to, in a series, each book needs to stand alone as well as be part of the series. You're going to have readers come in on your third book. They're going to find it, in the library, or they're going to find it. They can't find the first one. So you can't assume that they've read the first one. So a book coach can really help you navigate having a book that's complete on its own, but also bringing in these series elements from book to book. So a book coach can kind of see the overall picture where maybe you can't. One of the ways this happens is in order to keep it as a series and also a standalone, like in the mystery series, it's a little easier because you sort of usually have a mystery to solve, a murder to solve. That's what I was writing. But through my settings and my secondary characters, I kept the series going. The protagonist had friends and frenemies, and that featured in all the books, unless they got killed off, which sometimes happens. And so I think that's where a book coach can really spot where a new reader might be confused and help you out of that particular dilemma. Carrie, what say you?
Well, I hate to have to follow the expert because I have not written a series. I am not currently working on a series. I do read a ton of them. And when I started thinking about this question, I think for me, it was a little bit different depending on what kind of a series you're working on. And you guys have touched on this a little bit. I think I would plan a little differently or think a little differently about coaching someone who is working on a detective or a mystery series or something that was more contemporary and episodic in nature, as opposed to like a sci-fi fantasy epic series. When I think about that kind of a series, I think of this, there's the starting point for the protagonist and there's this end point that's well in the future, and that each of these things is building towards that final showdown, that sort of ultimate summary of the quest where they're going to, vanquish the bad guy or whatever ends up happening. Whereas a detective series, mystery series, other kind of episodic kind of series, I referenced in my notes, middle grade Babysitter's Club, which just shows how old I am. But I loved those. And that's just another example that's not an adult fiction, but something that, they continued the story and the characters for a number of books. I don't even know how many there were, but there were a lot and they were good. So I think I'm always a fan of having some kind of a plan when you start writing, but I think with a sci-fi fantasy epic, you have to know where you're going to end up. Because then I think you can map out the incremental steps that you're going to need to take in order for your character to get to that ultimate showdown. As Stephanie noted, you will have these new ideas and threads that will sprout up as you write, and you're going to want to be able to track and exploit those. But you also want to make sure that they're going to fit into your overall narrative and they're not taking you down this completely different pathway, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're still planning and writing, but if you have 2 books out of 5 in the world, that could be really problematic because you don't want to turn up in the third book. And as Terry said, all of a sudden you're a master gardener and people are going, well, where did that come from? Or there's something completely out of character or something that just doesn't fit into the world that you've created for your readers. With that more episodic kind of thing, as Terry said too, like I think giving your characters room to grow is key. Just going back to the garden example for one more second, I think you could take someone who hated gardening to be a master gardener, but there needs to be that thread throughout where, you can see why the character has evolved to do this thing that they hated and now they love. Like what changed with them that makes that a logical progression, a believable progression, not just, oh, I hate it. Whoop, next book, opening scene, she's harvesting tomatoes. Like what the heck happened? So with all of that speaks back to the planning thing too, about keeping careful outlines of character info and plot, and that can help you track and identify those areas of growth and change from one book to the next. So it's kind of my high level thoughts on that.
Yeah.
It's so great that I feel like I take something away from every one of these videos as we do them, because you guys make such great points and ways of thinking about things that I hadn't thought of. And obviously, like I said, this is not my wheelhouse, so it was fun to listen to your thoughts. And it always comes back to why, right? Why are you making the choices that you're making? So great. That's it for today. We hope that you found an answer that made sense for you at this point in your life and at this point in your book series. Remember, you can submit your question anytime at dearbookcoach.com, and at dearbookcoach.com, you can also subscribe to our weekly email and be eligible monthly to win a call with a coach. All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye.